Take a deep breath of fresh air as if it were your last. Now consider what would happen if this was actually your last breath of fresh air. Imagine that every breath after that was thick, sickening, and heavy. That's how life is in the heart of the American South, where the air should be as free as the spirit of its people, but a different truth unfolds. This is a story where the line between progress and prejudice blurs into a toxic haze, leaving the black communities of Cancer Alley in its wake. But what sets this battleground apart is the insidious nature of the enemy. Environmental racism, a quiet assassin that disproportionately targets one community, the black population.
For most of plastics. So most it would be the biggest plastics crisis. Biggest crisis.
How many more you want to die?
Cancer Alley, where black lives don't matter. Cancer Alley, originally dubbed Plantation Country, is an 85-mile-long area located in the south of Louisiana along the lower Mississippi River, where enslaved Africans were forced to labor. Before we dig deeper, it'll be appreciated if you subscribe and leave a like. Now back to the video. Louisiana's landscape along the Mississippi River was once a patchwork of fields, farms, and plantations cultivated and tended by enslaved African Americans. Today, the skyline is no longer a picturesque landscape, but a gloomy conglomeration of hundreds of metal towers, refineries, industrial parks, and petrochemical plants emitting constant columns of smoke and flame. Many of the people currently living in Cancer Alley are descendants of slaves who once worked in these fields. Some residents and activists call it Death Alley because the people who live there are dying because of pollution. The main culprits are the nearly 150 plastic manufacturing and production plants and other petrochemical plants. Beginnings, foundations laid. The history of Cancer Alley dates back to the early 1900s when Louisiana began to attract oil and chemical companies. These companies were drawn to the state's abundant natural resources and its lax environmental regulations. The first industry was built in 1923 when the Texas company, later Texaco, opened a refinery in Baton Rouge. The region's proximity to the Mississippi River and the Gulf of Mexico made it an attractive location for investors. As a result, Louisiana became a major center for the petrochemical industry. Impact on black communities. The petrochemical boom in Cancer Alley provided a beacon of economic hope for black communities, offering jobs that promised stability and upward mobility. However, the initial optimism among black residents gradually transformed into concern as the devastating health consequences of living in proximity to these industrial giants became apparent. Sacrificed spaces, environmental racism. About 50 toxic chemicals circulate in the air because of the industries including benzene, formaldehyde, and ethylene oxide. In the late 1980s, the chemical corridor showed its real face when residents of Jacobs Drive in St. Gabriel, a low-income community in Iberville Parish, noticed an abundance of cancer cases and miscarriages within their community. They coined the term Cancer Alley to reflect the concentration. The promise of employment collided with the harsh reality of higher rates of cancer and respiratory issues linked to pollution. As a result, the narrative shifted from economic opportunity to environmental justice activism, with black communities leading the charge in advocating for their right to a clean and healthy living environment. As similar incidences started to increase in surrounding areas, the alley grew to encompass an 85-mile stretch along the Mississippi River, stretching from New Orleans to Baton Rouge, including many parishes. For decades, there was a lack of research on cancer and pollution rates in the region, which often left some residents feeling like their experiences were ignored. But last year, 2 new studies linked air pollution to higher cancer rates in Louisiana's black communities, with black neighborhoods in the state emitting 7 to 21 times more emissions than white communities. The cancer risks in African American majority districts in St. James Parish could be at 104 and 105 cases per million, while those threats in predominantly white districts range from 60 to 75 per million. The risk of cancer in the corridor is 95% higher than in most of the country. A resident of Reserve, Louisiana, Robert Taylor, called his home the cancer capital of the U.S. He shared his story and said that the cancer rate is 800 times higher than the national average. His brother and sister's son died of cancer, while his mother, wife, daughter, and next-door neighbor suffered from it. Residents complain about intrusive chemical odors and declining garden vegetation, as these industries are dumping their waste in the Mississippi River. Residents say the old habit of sitting outside on summer nights has long gone out of style, thanks to chemicals released at night. Sometimes they are as thick as a golden mist and fall like yellow raindrops. People often find dead birds on their lawns. Social injustice. Not only environmentally, blacks have also faced social injustice in Cancer Alley. On Plaquemines Island, Dow Chemical, one of Louisiana's largest petrochemical complexes, evicted families from the area in 1957 to create a natural buffer around the area. In Gramercy, Noranda Alumina Co. received a $1 million forgivable loan from the Louisiana Economic Development Corporation to build a new pond for manufacturing waste, even though it is Louisiana's largest mercury polluter. The hopes given by the industries of providing employment to the locals were just a mere lie. People in St. Gabriel and similar riverside communities once hoped that the industry would provide them with jobs that at least paid better and were less demanding than the ones they grew up with. "We thought there were better jobs, but they brought their own people here," said the former coastal worker who spent most of his life working as a gravel hauler. Willis said, "They'll say we can't pass the exam, that we're on drugs." The 1995 employment survey, conducted shortly after the city of St. Gabriel was established, found that less than 9% of full-time industrial jobs in the city of St. Gabriel were held by local residents. But every time a new factory was proposed, there was always the promise of jobs. Over time, residents began to view such promises with skepticism. St. Gabriel Mayor Lionel Johnson believes there's a reason why companies don't want to hire workers living close to factories, as they may be too concerned about pollution. Black residents of Cancer Alley have also been historically underrepresented in political office, which has made it difficult for them to have their voices heard and to advocate for their own interests. This has contributed to the lack of environmental justice and access to health care in the area. Over the line, hope for change. Although EPA has investigated, monitored, and recognized the problems caused by sacrificial zones, it has been unable to directly address these problems with effective short- and long-term solutions. The lives, livelihoods, and futures of the people who live and work there are an offering. Cancer Alley residents are fighting for recognition and change. Sharon Levine is a former special education teacher who is dedicated to raising awareness and combating the increasing amount of carcinogenic plastic pollution in her community. In 2018, Lavigne founded Risa St. James, an organization focused on bringing environmental equity and justice to the people of St. James Parish, who live in one of Cancer Alley's pollution hotspots. Levine has no radical demands. She just wants residents to breathe clean air and drink clean water. Her organization's success has been limited, but in 2018 she succeeded in blocking the construction of a large-scale plastics production facility. Residents and various activist groups also banded together to file a complaint with the EPA against the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. A 2022 letter from EPA to LDQ acknowledged the health concerns of local residents and stated, "Based on the findings thus far in EPA's investigation, EPA is issuing this letter to provide significant supporting evidence that departments, actions or inactions have had and will continue to have a variety of negative impacts on black residents of Cancer Alley. EPA said that it will take a series of key actions to reduce the impact of emissions. This includes ordering some facilities to improve their waste management practices, proposing new rules to limit pollution, and conducting assessments to examine the health risks associated with emissions. The living conditions in these places are unacceptable. These are human sacrifices. We can also help these people by raising awareness and our voices against this greed. You can also share your thoughts in the comment section. In the face of environmental racism, the black communities of Cancer Alley have become architects of hope, constructing bridges towards a future where justice flows as freely as the rivers that wind through this land. The battle is far from over, but the fight for environmental justice in Cancer Alley has ignited a spark that refuses to be extinguished. It's a call echoing through the bayous, resonating in every heartbeat and reverberating across the nation,